Olamide just released a self-titled album, but I think most of us have even forgotten who Olamide is. And today we take ourselves back to the memory lane and let us remind ourselves who Olamide is. So I'll be talking about the top 5 greatest album of Olamide. At number 5 is The Glory. This album is one of these most underrated albums. This album focused on storytelling, raw bars, and some punchlines. And one of the noticeable tracks on the album is Letter to Millie, Journey to a Thousand Miles, which lay emphasis on storytelling. And if one day Miliano listens to their Letter to Millie song, he will understand the legacy his father laid down. And that is why he's one of the greatest Afrobeat artists of all time. At number 4 is Carpe Diem in 2020. This album was a very matured one. It's just a reflection that he doesn't have anything to prove, but it was a very classic album. And one might argue that this is one of his greatest albums. And also in this album, he featured a lot of young artists and tried to bring them into the limelight. Example is Bella Shmurda, example is Bad Boy Teams, Even the song with Omale, Infinity, went global. And I think this album was supposed to have a UK tour or something, but I think due to COVID-19, that didn't happen. But this album was class. That is why it's number 4 on my list. At number 3 is Street OT in 2014. This is one of the realest albums Olamide have ever made. This was just full of vibes, street vibe, crazy beats. And also it was like a love letter to his followers, like people that loves him and people that were around him. And a song to back that up is like Awon Guns Me. That was one of the songs that showed that Olamide really cared about his crews and his fans. At number 2 is Baddest Guy Ever Lived. This album was massive. To put into context, this album was the album of the year in the SZ Award 2013. We are talking about boldness, confidence. That is what the album portrayed. And if we are talking about club hits, this album was full of hits. Slangs, I think that was where Drosoke came in. That was where Riba and Abasha came in. All those kind of slangs was on this album. This is another album Olamide talked about himself and his people. At number 1 is YBNN in 2012. To me, this is Olamide's breakout album because this album defined him, his style, his love for the streets, his aura, his confidence, his everything. This album pushed Olamide out. And I'm talking about some Afrobeat hooks. This album fell under these categories. And this is one of the albums that pushed all these indigenous rappers to want to do more because it was a very successful one. And it's like a motivation for most indigenous rappers. Like Voice of the Streets, First of All, Ile for Illuminating. And I think this is the best album Olamide has ever produced. So I think I've been able to bring you back to those memory lane and to prove to you that Olamide is not just a singer, he's a legend in the game. And big shout out to Olamide.